Good evening, everybody, and welcome to today's Swansea Food Forum. It's an absolute pleasure to have you joining us today. So my name is Laura Wilkinson, and I am one of the conveners for today's session. We're also joined by Dawn Lyle from For the Region, who is our second convener for this evening, and she's also our IT lead, and we're very grateful to her for that as well. And we're joined by Evie, who is our overall note taker. But we're also supported by a host of fantastic facilitators and note takers who are going to contribute and help us with this evening's discussions. And we're extremely grateful for their help and their time. So if I could take a few moments just to give you a little bit of background. The aim of our session today is to provide a space for people to share their thoughts and ideas on a city and county where everyone who works, lives, visits, has a business or studies in Swansea has access to good food, which is what we're all really passionate about. And we want to know that there is a strong support network for local food producers and food businesses. And we're really, really interested in your thoughts on how we can achieve that. So your ideas and your thoughts will be collated and used as the basis for a community food strategy. And the idea is really to transform Swansea's food system into one that works for people and for nature. And the framework that we'll be using to help us to form the strategy is Sustainable Food Places, which is an initiative to facilitate cities and towns and boroughs and counties within the UK to transform their local food systems. So for us, we have a brilliant group called Boyd Abertawe, which is set up to explore the possibility of establishing a sustainable food place for here in Swansea. And so I'm hopeful that one of my colleagues can share with you the Boyd Abertawe email address, so that if you would like to join our mailing list, you can drop an email to the boydabertawe@gmail.com email address that Dawn's very kindly just put in the chat for us. And then you will be added to the mailing list so you can know what's going on. So I have just done just two really simple slides to share with you. What we wanted to do is we wanted to just provide a starter question, a deliberative question. So that's shown on the screen now. So that question is, how do you picture a food system that works for people and nature for Swansea City and County? So that's the question. But also what we wanted to do to help you to think in different ways about this question. We also have these 6 themes or 6 key issues that we can use to help guide us. And so we've got 6 altogether, and you'll notice that there's a box around 3, 4, 5 and 6. Now 1 and 2 are very important, but we did just want to kind of place a bit of emphasis onto 3, 4, 5 and 6. So number 1 is about food governance and strategy. So taking a strategic and collaborative approach to good food governance and action. The second one is the good food movement. So building public awareness, active food citizenship and a local good food movement. We have number 3, which is healthy food for all. So tackling food poverty, diet-related ill health and ensuring affordable healthy food. 4th, the sustainable food economy, so creating a vibrant, prosperous and diverse sustainable food economy. Number 5, which is catering and procurement, so transforming catering and procurement and revitalising local and sustainable food supply chain. And then finally, food for the planet, so tackling the climate and nature emergency through sustainable food and farming and an end to food waste. So quite a lot to think about there. So you know, give it some thought. Think about what your personal ideas are. There's no right or wrongs in this. We want to hear a range of different opinions. So while you're listening to our speakers, which who are going to be introduced by Dawn in a moment, you know, keep these things in mind. So I'll just stop sharing for now. And I will hand over to Dawn, who I think is going to be sorting out our talks and introducing our speakers. So thank you.
Brill, thank you, Laura. I've pasted those 6 themes with question prompts in the chat as well for reference, but those are sort of guiding all of our thoughts and discussions today. Now, the structure of today is that we'll have a number of speakers sharing very quick presentations, which gives us some context to consider before we go into broader discussion and into the breakout rooms. Our first speaker is Hannah Norman. She's the Wales Community Food Manager for Soil Association and Food Sense Wales. And she's involved in sustainable food places, Food for Life get-togethers and other good food movement programmes. And she's a trained organic grower, and she currently supports a growing enterprise in the north of Swansea. So Hannah, are you here and able to share for about 5 minutes? We're going to be really strict in trying to keep everybody to time. So if I have to interrupt you, please don't be offended. But Hannah, if you're there and ready, please take it away.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dawn. Can I get a thumbs up if you can hear me? I'm on a laptop I'm not usually using, so that's good to know. So yeah, thank you, Dawn, and thank you, Laura, for a brilliant introduction to sustainable food places, and to the Boyd Abertawe group for inviting me to say a few words this evening. I've got a few slides to share, which I'll put up in a second. I know I've got to be really, really quick, so I'll not rattle on too much. But yeah, I'm the Wales Community Food Manager working across Soil Association and Food for Life, the Food for Life get-togethers team, and Food Sense Wales, which I know many of you are aware of. And yeah, I'm quite new in post, so still learning some of this, but I work across the get-togethers programme and sustainable food places, managing the sustainable food places in Wales. So I will just share a few slides. I think the idea was to go into the governance side of sustainable food places tonight, but what I thought I'd do is do a quick run through of sustainable food places for people who aren't aware, and a bit more in detail about what's involved in becoming a member of sustainable food places, and in that is part of the governance. So let me crack on. So sustainable food places, as many of you will know, it's one of the UK's fastest growing movements, bringing together pioneering food partnerships across the UK. It is a place-based approach to creating a cross-sector food partnership, creating a vision for a healthy and sustainable food system. It is hosted by 3 organisations, so the Soil Association, Sustain and Food Matters. And we've got national partners, and that's what Food Sense Wales are. We're a national delivery partner for sustainable food places, focusing on the membership that we have in Wales, and funded by the Lottery and Esme Fairbairn as well. So as Sustainable Food Places as a national programme, there's 17 network members. So it's a membership organisation, which the first stage is becoming a member. And then you've got a bronze, silver, gold tier system as well, which you can work your way through as a place. So these are the members that we currently have in Wales at the moment. So we have Food Cardiff, which was the first sustainable food place. And then we've got Food Vale, who are a member, Monmouthshire, who are a recently new member. We've got RCT, Blaenau Gwent, North Powys and Carmarthenshire have just applied for membership in the round that just happened this month. So they'll be finding out in the next 2 weeks whether they were successful or not. And then we've got Torfaen, who are working towards membership. And then there's obviously yourselves who are having discussions at the moment as well. And I'm recently been in talks with Ceredigion. So we are having conversations with people in North Wales. Obviously it's open to everyone across the country. So hopefully we can branch out into North Wales as well. So just wanted to quickly go, I won't go through all of this, I know we've got a very short amount of time, but the role of a sustainable food place. So there's two key areas. The first, to establish a broad, representative and dynamic local food partnership. And, you know, it is a partnership model. It's not a tick box exercise of doing this, this and this will make us a sustainable food place. It is a place-based model that is adaptable to your area. As you know, it started as sustainable food cities, and that, you know, was no longer relevant when there were other areas that realized that this was a fantastic way of building up that partnership. So it is entirely different for every single area, but these are the kind of collective vision of sustainable food places which you can implement in your area. So it's about establishing a local cross-sector food partnership involving public and third sector, business and community representatives that meet regularly and committed to working together across all the food issues. It's about establishing a term of reference and operating in an open, transparent and democratic way. Key institutions need to be involved, so including local authorities, talking about health boards, education, people working in food poverty and food sovereignty across the whole food sector coming together. And also establishing working groups, which I know there are quite a few in Swansea already. And it's bringing all those people together to work towards one vision that works for your area. The other part of the role of sustainable food places is to develop, deliver and monitor this food strategy and action plan, which, you know, meetings like this will go into creating an action plan for Swansea area. So a food partnership develops, publishes and regularly reviews a food strategy or action plan that covers all key food issues in consultation with wider stakeholders. And there's more here, I won't go into the details because I know I'm short of time. But this is something as well which should be mentioned, to develop and promote an identity. So it's an identity for Swansea, for your initiative, and use this as an umbrella to connect and promote all the inspiring work which is already happening, and focusing obviously on healthy and sustainable food in your place. So these are the 6. I won't go into these because you've already covered these already, and it's part of the framework for tonight. So sustainable food places, systems approach, and we've got these 6 key areas which we'll discuss tonight. I thought this is a really important kind of, it's quite hard sometimes to get your head around the model of sustainable food places. And this is an example from Food Cardiff, which is quite a good visual representation of how the partnership works. So if you, on your journey to becoming a sustainable food place, there's the opportunity to have a coordinator, an Sfp coordinator. So every area has a coordinator. This can be part funded, it's a funded role, and we match fund it up to a certain amount from sustainable food places. And that coordinator oversees the partnership, the work that the partnership is doing. So in the process of becoming a member, you have to put together a steering group, and the core members of that steering group need to be somebody from the health board, you need representation from the private sector, from producers, from retailers, from, who've I missed, education, from local authority, all the key people that can be representative, can represent the different areas of the food system in your area. And then the next level of that partnership is groups, so working groups, is networks, and any other partnerships that kind of have a say, and then that feeds into the steering group. And then there's all the good work. So for example, in Cardiff here, some of the work that they've done recently, 5,000 households given 20,000 plug plants during lockdown, thousands of people accessing healthy, affordable food through alternative retail projects, 2,500 people co-designing the good food strategy that they have in Cardiff. So hopefully that explains how a sustainable food place is managed from not managed, but overseen from the governance side. There's also campaigns, which as a sustainable food place that we can support you in. And some of these you might know, the one that's running at the moment is Food for the Planet. We've also got Sugar Smart, Sustainable Fish Cities, and then there's Veg Cities as well. Core Sustainable Food Places team put together an events calendar, which we help the Sustainable Food Places promote. And you can be part of all these and you get marketing materials. This ties into like local strategies and policy that's happening across the board as the UK and Wales as well. How, as a delivery partner, Food Sense Wales, what we do is we support the members. So we will help you as a or working towards your membership, develop a vision. We can do consultations, help you with food strategies, policy mapping, you know, governance, terms of reference, all those things. And once you have a coordinator in place, we then support that coordinator with online toolkits. There's membership dashboards, there's peer-to-peer learning, so a new coordinator can learn from a well-established SFP area, and support from local delivery partners, which is Food Sense Wales. I've mentioned Cardiff already, so just to finish, a couple of dates. So there's the Sustainable Food Places Conference, which is happening in September. So that is invite only, because it's really focusing on the core people in the sustainable food places. But if you are working towards membership, then we can secure a few places for key actors in your group to come along to. But something that's open to all, we are having a Wales Sfp Conference on the 30th of June and 1st of July in Carmarthenshire. And this will be focusing on leadership, governance and action. And the invites for that will be going out in the next few weeks. We're still in the planning stage, but you'll be hearing more about that shortly. But if you are keen to attend, you can send me an email. I'll drop it in the chat. So there's I have 2 email addresses. We're going to cross 2 organisations, so you can get me on either of those. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to tonight and the conversations that are going to come around this. And yeah, thank you very much.
Brill, thank you, Hannah. Thanks for that quick canter through the Sustainable Food Places programme, and yeah, really looking forward to getting on board with that. And I guess tonight is the first stage of that. So I have a video recording for our next speaker. So Louise Denham is our next speaker, and she's from Food Vale, which is a good food movement. So she's speaking on our second key issue, good food movement. So let me start this video.
Hello everyone, Shemai. My name is Louise. I'm the coordinator of Food Vale, which is the Sustainable Food Partnership in the Vale of Glamorgan. Thanks very much for having me, and sorry I can't be there live this evening for Boyd Abertawe's first food forum, first of many I'm sure, but thank you very much for inviting me to contribute anyway. So I'm going to be talking about the good food movement. So good food movement is one of the 6 key issue areas of the Sustainable Food Places framework, and they kind of break this down into 2 topic areas, which are inspire and engage the public about good food, and foster food citizenship and a local good food movement. So you can find out more about this information on their website, but I'm just going to pick out a few of the things relating to this description that we've been doing in the Vale. So in terms of raising public awareness of food issues, for this, the internet has very much been our friend, not just because there's been a global pandemic, but also because it's just the way information is shared a lot of the time these days. So we've really utilised social media. We've got Twitter and Facebook. We send out a newsletter once every couple of months. We've got a website that we keep up to date, and we also have run in the past a number of different engagement events online and in person, and have had a number of different kind of videos and video content shared as well. So in terms of our kind of opportunities for getting people involved in the local good food movement, this really kicked off last year. So in 2021, we held our first Food Vale Festival, which provided a host of different opportunities, all online because of the pandemic. But they were really engaging nonetheless. So we had kind of videos spotlighting local businesses and which kind of aligned them to our work. We had virtual family cook-alongs through Zoom. We had Twitter takeovers. We had online discussion panels. And it was really, really great, and so good, in fact, that we decided to do it again. And we have literally just finished our second Food Vale Festival. This year, because of restrictions easing, we were able to do a few different kind of online and in-person events. And we really tried to have a bit more of a community-led focus this year. So we distributed a few small grants thanks to some funding from the Health Board, who are actually my employers. So we had seed swaps, growing workshops, foraging walks, garden tours, all that kind of thing, a range of really nice activities. And as I said, we've literally just finished the festival, so we're kind of still processing all of the feedback from it at the moment, but here's some snippets from social media. And those are some images as well from a workshop delivered with a local school. The pupils were invited to kind of grow their own microgreens. And then at the end of the day, farmers market and sold it by donation to their families, which was really, really lovely. In terms of an umbrella campaign to encourage people to take action, we've done what quite a few other partnerships have done, which is to establish a pledge system. So we invite people to kind of, through our website, go on our website, make a pledge, which they can either select from like a list of pre-made pledges, which contain things like commit to local produce, prioritize fair trade, organic certified things, get involved with a local food project and that kind of thing. Or they can write their own pledge, they can make their own up, which a lot of people have done actually. And that is something as well that we can take out to events very simply with a small whiteboard, inviting people to kind of write their pledge, take a picture, take a selfie, share it online and all that kind of thing. So it's a really nice way of having conversations around it as well. And like I said, we've only just launched this as part of our festival actually. So we're still kind of working it all out, but we've had quite a few good pledges already. And I think it's something that's going to be really useful, just going into the future. So next, in terms of establishing a network for community food activists. So last year we set up the Food Vale Network, which is absolutely open to anyone. Anyone can come, and we have like farmers, we have community growers, we have businesses, people like business owners. We have all different range of people coming. And it's really nice to just be able to carve out that space for those conversations to happen and people to share ideas and connect with different projects across the Vale of Glamorgan. It's a really good catalyst for change in the Vale and a really nice way to have that platform for creating that collective voice for where to change, and like for that collective voice to be really distinct to our place as well. It's something that's very, personal and appropriate for how people see things happening in the Vale. And that picture there is from a couple of us at the last network meeting where we launched our action plan, which was very exciting. So next we have supporting local community food initiatives and food growing projects. So we've done a number of different things with some of the food growing projects across the Vale, of which there are quite a few projects. It's really great to see. We've helped a couple of them identify and apply for funding to support their kind of wider ambitions for, delivering training programs and that kind of thing with their own local communities. And we also did a video last year on a couple of different community food growing projects in the Vale. It's on our YouTube channel actually, and that was really nice to just take that opportunity to celebrate them and celebrate some of the people that are kind of putting in a lot of time for them as well. And just beautiful visuals on that as well. Really nice thing to do.
Right, the power that I have when it's a video is to keep her to time. So I'm going to stop sharing that presentation. We will share the full recording with you all after today's meeting, because she does go in and share some more great examples and about some of their challenges. So it's all really relevant, but I'm very conscious of time. Now, our next speaker on the third of our issues is Melvin. Melvin, are you here and ready to share? So Melvin Williams is a volunteer community commissioner on the Swansea Poverty Truth Commission, which is about giving people with lived experience of poverty space to share their stories and build relationships and help make influential decisions in the area. So Melvin, are you there and able to talk to us?
Right. Yeah, as you said, I'm a community commissioner with the Swansea Poverty Truth Commission, which is it's the first Poverty Truth Commission in Wales. There've been a number in Scotland and England, but we are the first one in Wales. And you can, if you want to know more about that, you can see it on the SCVS website. Now We've talked a fair bit about food and access to food over well, it's been a couple of years now, because we started round about the beginning of lockdown, and things have been slow to develop because of lockdown. So the aim is to eventually talk to decision makers in Swansea and let them know what our issues are. But because of lockdown, it's been very slow. Now, one of the issues is the safety net in terms of benefits it's just not sufficient, and the lack of a fair wage in Britain also means that people who are working full time are still in poverty sometimes. And lockdown it exacerbated some of the issues in terms of transport, for example, delivery charges for food. Now you'd think that it's easy enough to get food delivered, and for a lot of people during lockdown it was, but that has to be paid for. There's an extra, it suddenly makes food more expensive. People living in poverty are often living week to week, so they're not able to buy food in bulk, which is what a lot of people, method a lot of people use to make food cheaper. Food banks are, they're one solution, but they're not pleasant for anyone. Let's face it, there's a lot of stigma attached to using a food bank. Nobody's going to say that they're proud that they use a food bank, but also the type of food available at food banks tends not to be that healthy. And it also doesn't cater for specific dietary requirements. Just because you're poor, it doesn't mean you're not gluten intolerant. Or you might have specific cultural requirements that mean you can't eat specific foods. And of course, they're not that accessible. Again, you have to travel to a food bank, and if you can't afford to use public transport and you haven't got a car, then that makes everything more difficult as well. And there's just no end of issues, really. Rural poverty, and again, transport and food delivery becomes more of an issue. School meal provision in holidays isn't universal, and it's you're going to be even poorer at those points because you can't go to work because you have to look after your children in the holidays. And over the next year or so, it's just going to get worse and worse because people are now going to be getting clobbered by the fuel price rises and petrol price rises. So transport becomes much more expensive, and just cooking food becomes much more expensive for a lot of people. And we've got commissioners who are already having to go without food in order to feed their children, and that's currently that's before things get worse with the increase in fuel prices over the next couple of years. A big issue with us is that a lot of members are carers. So and the reason that people are in poverty is because they have to either care for relatives or because they have physical or mental health issues themselves, which makes it difficult or impossible for them to earn a living in a normal way. Now, that, of course, the fact that you can't, you're too ill to actually earn a living also means that all the other things that you'd think would save you money and help you get healthier food, gardening, if you've got an allotment, all these things, the sort of self-help initiatives there's not much point aiming those things and promoting those things to people who aren't, either physically or mentally capable of holding down a job. And this, physical and mental illness it seems to be a very large part of poverty in terms of our commissioners. We got people who are neurodivergent as commissioners, people with very extensive caring responsibilities. So the kind of the lack of money and also lack of time, it really is a full-time job being poor. So these are I think probably the issues that we've identified so far. But as far as the Swansea Food Forum is concerned, I guess that we'd like there to be a way for us to certainly for the voices of people with the experience of poverty to feed into it on a more permanent, long-term basis. Really, yeah, I think that's about it as far as what I'd like to say.
Brilliant, Melvin. Thank you for covering off a lot of those issues and making that real for people in the room. I think there's been some endorsement of many of your points in the chat, and really, really helpful to have your perspective. And you've done a good job of keeping to time, so thank you very much for that as well.
You're
it's
welcome.
A bonus. Right, the next one is on me again to try and play a recording, so bear with me now. I've got a presentation from Rhian Marston. It's Rhian Marston, who's the community dietitian working in public health dietetics for Swansea Bay University Health Board.
We give people the skills, resources and support needed to feed themselves well. We don't directly work with the public because we're working on a train-the-trainer approach, but we support those staff we have trained to deliver these programmes, such as Community Food and Nutrition Skills Level 1, Foodwise for Life, an 8-week weight management programme, and Get Cooking, practical cooking skills. So once we've trained people at level 2, we support them to deliver these level 1 programmes themselves, which increases the capacity of my team and makes our efforts sustainable. We work with partners to deliver national schemes. We've worked with over 35 early years and childcare settings on the Gold Standard Snack Award to establish healthy snacks, good food hygiene and oral health practices, ensuring children under 5 have access to nutritious foods and drinks. Food and Fun, Bwyd a Hwyl, is a school holiday enrichment programme delivered by school staff and partners who we've trained. Healthy meals, food and nutrition education and physical activity are provided to children in a fun environment for 12 days over the summer holidays. Last year, 13 schools and around 700 children took part across our health board area. Challenges have been how to keep delivering our service during the pandemic. Digitalisation was the answer, but this in itself was a challenge. I'm pleased to say that we've now got almost 100% of our programmes in a digital format. We have a finite capacity, so we can't work with all partners. Also, we can't work directly with communities. Rather, we need to persuade partners to train a member of staff, which increases our capacity and makes their project sustainable. Sometimes staff lack confidence to go forward, even with our support, and we can lose partnerships and funding can stop. Our future plans are to consolidate our work even further, develop digital tools and of course to support Bwyd Abertawe on its aims to become a sustainable food place. As you can see, the Nutrition Skills for Life objectives coincide with those of the Sustainable Food Places Network. If you want to read these, please access our website at nutritionskillsforlife.com. I hope I've given a taste of what Nutrition Skills for Life is about and what we can offer. Thank you very much for listening.
Right, for our fourth key issue, we've got Trevor and Bettina Davies from the Rowan Tree, which is a market garden on the Gower, which grows flowers, herbs, fruit and vegetables. So Trevor or Bettina, are you here and able to talk to us?
We're new kids on the block, as it were. We've been growing flowers in the east, in Hertfordshire for about 8 years, and we've moved down here because we had the opportunity to take on an ecological land co-op plot, which is what we're waiting for planning permission for in order to do a full OPD residency and continue and expand our market garden. I've written some stuff out. Please excuse me, this is all news to me and I'm enjoying it very much, but I'm just going to tell you, as Elizabeth asked me if we could just talk about our experience from the beginning of our doing this work together, and possibly some of this may be of use, and if not, well, I might think of a couple of jokes at some point, hopefully, to keep you awake. Maybe not. So we've been working 1.5 acres of this field on the Gower Peninsula for nearly 2 years. It was pasture land. We're now growing vegetables and cut flowers. We grow organically. We only use hand tools. We've established markets. Actually, last year was very successful from that point of view for us. We're dealing with lots of Swansea florists, a Mumbles greengrocer, a Swansea veg box scheme, a splendid organic food shop on the Gower Peninsula, and I'll speak a bit more about that later on, and some private customers. This year we're going to expand the business to include a small local veg box scheme of our own, that is, and a cut flower subscription service, which we've already got rolling. I have to say, before we go any farther, that we've had fantastic help, support and advice from other growers, Kaitan, Summit Good, Big Meadow. We've done work with the Shared Plate, Pobble's Pantry, Farm Co, Jack's here I see, and lots of lovely florists who are very keen to have organically grown seasonal flowers from a local garden. And that's really been very encouraging. And it's obvious now, it's also to us, that there are many people in Swansea who are deeply concerned about our food culture. And I think there's very good reason to have that concern. Our history, we began 10 years ago with an attempt to start a market garden in Hertfordshire. We'd become very close to food self-sufficiency on an allotment plot and wanted to scale up and grow for others. As participants in a Esme Fairbairn Foundation research project into local food, organic food production, we discovered after a year of surveys and site visits that the local populace were 100% in favor of local organic growers, provided that the food would be sold through the huge local Waitrose supermarket and that it would be cheaper. We acknowledged defeat and started to grow cut flowers instead. So that's how we ended up doing this flower thing. 2 years ago, we sold the cut flower business and came to Gower to get back on the market gardening track. We'd spent a couple of years searching the UK for land and a small dwelling we could afford. There was no such thing. It doesn't exist because land has gradually been accumulated by corporations and industrial scale farms, and prices have risen to the level where ordinary people who are growers can't buy land, really. You have to have money from somewhere else. And that was, there's very little support overall for small scale growing anyway. It's always represented as being inefficient and insufficient, despite ample evidence to the contrary. So that's our side of of this business, is what we're aiming to promote. My first and most important point that I'd like to make from our experience is that nothing is really going to change in any fundamental way with the national food picture until land is made available for commercial small-scale local growers. and many more allotments are created for ordinary people to grow some of their own food at least. Our breakthrough was, as I mentioned earlier, the Ecological Land Co-op, and I'll happily tell anyone who's interested how that has changed our lives. But we need many such organizations, not just one. Local councils, Swansea in this case, but it applies to every place that I've lived, need to be convinced to buy agricultural land and to let it to small growers and allotmenteers. There used to be council farms, and they've all been sold off. That was a mistake, in my opinion. They would also have to provide horticultural and agricultural training to people of all ages who are serious about growing some of their own food or actually going into it as a money-making venture. This would provide healthy food for local populations, minimize the negative environmental and health effects of international trade and shipping, the negative effects of petrochemical-based machinery, fertilizers, herbicides, and pesticides. So that's my take on the land. The other big problem is a social and actually a very personal problem, which just, is so enormous that I'm really asking for help rather than telling you anything you don't know. The big problem is habit. We've all been trained by supermarkets and the food industry to eat industrial processed food laced with sugar, salt, preservatives, and colorings. Most kids and many adults haven't the faintest idea what food straight from our mother planet is. And to be honest, they don't seem to want to know in many cases. Unconscious habit is the underlying problem for almost all of humanity's ills. I promise you that's true. Write it down. So this second and related problem is enormous, and I have no idea how it can be solved, because it relies on people wanting, or at least being willing, to change. Answers on a postcard, please. Just one final point. Our local organic grocer on the Gower Peninsula is giving up and converting his shop to a cafe. It's the only shop like it in Swansea, as far as I know. His loyal customer base evaporated over one weekend when the current petrol, gas, electricity, climate change, World War III, etc. crises all came together 2 weeks ago. Back they went to the supermarkets, back to imported food, back to insecurity. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Trevor. Sad note to end on, but some really, really important points that you've raised there, and access to land is a key issue that just comes up again and again. So thank you so much for emphasising that and for your insights this evening. Really, really helpful. Right, I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Dr. Elizabeth Westaway is a co-founder and director of Growing Real Food for Nutrition, which is a social enterprise that's all about measuring and promoting the benefits of nutrient-dense food. Now, Elizabeth has done a huge amount of work in preparing us for today's food forum behind the scenes, and she's a real advocate for all of this and a real driving force behind Bywyd Abertawe and the move to become a sustainable food place. So Elizabeth, I'll hand over to you, and I'll trust that you will keep to time.
Lovely, thank you so much. So key issue 5 is catering and procurement, and it's about transforming catering and procurement and revitalising local, sustainable and nutrient-dense food supply chains. So this provides an important opportunity to promote good food across a wide range of settings, such as nurseries, schools, colleges, universities, hospitals, care homes, workplace canteens, and small-scale catering outlets. So by transforming catering, it's possible to improve eating habits of many thousands of people. It's also possible to create large-scale demand for healthy, local, sustainable and nutrient-dense food, and enable a paradigm shift in food production and supply chains. So my organisation, Griffin, its vision is for everyone to be eating local, seasonal, fresh, high quality, nutrient dense food. And we look at food supply chains with a nutrition and health lens to highlight how different decisions by different people across the food supply chain can maximise the nutritional value of food and result in better human health outcomes. So there are strong linkages between soil health, food quality and human health. And it's very important to know how your food is grown, from seed varieties to the health of the soil microbiome, agricultural practices used, and how food is processed. Now, research shows that industrial agriculture practices have led to a 40% loss of key minerals in the UK food supply chain between 1939 and 1991, which has continued since. And ploughing actually reduces crop yields. This is what's come out from recent research, and is linked to a loss of a key nutrient that reduces our risk of developing degenerative diseases such as Parkinson's. So we need to ensure that our, we need to ensure that our food systems are promoting soil health, animal welfare, environmental and social justice, agroecology, and food sovereignty. And food sovereignty is key. Now, this is where people who produce, distribute, and consume food also control the mechanisms and policies of food distribution to ensure nutrition security and healthy people and a healthy planet. Now, in contrast, the current food regime has profiteering multinational corporations and market institutions controlling the global food system, big ag, big food, and big pharma, making people and the planet sick. So why are vegetables produced by poor smallholder farmers in sub-Saharan Africa using hybrid or GM seeds and toxic chemicals shipped thousands of miles by a multinational corporation and sold in a supermarket with the produce covered in plastic? Whereas the same type of vegetables can be grown agroecologically on the Gower and be sold through a local, short, high quality, nutrient dense food supply chain to benefit the local economy. So food procurement is very topical at the moment, and there are efforts to get more local food into procurement systems that is also produced by smallholder farmers. And Carmarthenshire Food Network is a pioneer in dynamic food procurement in Wales. I would, however, argue that if we are serious about improving population health and the power of food as medicine to reverse or prevent diet-related non-communicable diseases such as type 2 diabetes, we need to ensure that food procurement systems for schools, hospitals, care homes and prisons support local agroecological farmers and growers able to produce ethical, high-quality, nutrient-dense food packed full of phytonutrients, and also for them to be fairly recompensed to reflect the true cost of our food. Now, we also have a right to nutritious food. Oops. So in terms of transforming catering and procurement, first we need to change policy and practice to put good food on people's plates. And there's some great examples of this going on already. So Brighton University's sustainable food policy covers fair trade, tap water, seasonal fruit and vegetables, organic milk, free range eggs and sustainable fish. London's Healthy Catering Commitment provides food businesses that meet healthy catering criteria with a recognised brand to promote their efforts. Now, secondly, we need to improve connections and collaborations across the local food supply chain, and short agroecological supply chains reduce food miles, carbon and ecological and water footprints, and benefit the local economy. And third and last, we need to focus on interventions that contribute to healthier food environments and shape dietary patterns in order to improve nutrition security. For example, improving the built environment to have more greener spaces, promoting the growing of nutrient-dense crops. We could also have zoning regulations and tax regimes to minimise food deserts and food swamps. So just a little bit about Griffin there, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Elizabeth. thank you very much for your presentation. Our next speaker is Tom O'Kane. Tom from Kaitan. Many of you will know that Tom is a real hero of local food with the community supported agriculture project Kaitan on the Gower. Tom, are you here and ready to share?
Yes, hiya, thank you, Dawn.
Hi.
Sorry, I thought I might get cut off then. I thought we might be running out of time. So I'll keep it brief. I've just written some notes. So yeah, basically I've got the title of Food for the Planet to talk about. And when I thought about it, I thought really the best food for the planet is the most appropriate local food for every community. And I think, you know, there are issues around land availability, lack of growers, and also, like I saw Laura mention in the chat there, hang on a minute, what about the lack of people investing in the current schemes that are already there, like Farmco, like Pobble's Pantry, like CSAs who are looking for more members. So I think fundamentally, if this program can raise the awareness of availability of local food and point people in the right direction, and at the same time as supporting the development of access to land and training for new growers, I think that'd be fantastic. Touching back on the Food for the Planet, we had Eric Gang come and talk to us last Friday, which was a really interesting day. Eric's on the call actually with us now. And that was quite interesting. He was originally from Cameroon, and he was talking about indigenous farming culture in Cameroon. And we had that discussion at the end. And I've heard very similar in a talk from Vandana Shiva, like the Indian and African continents are actually far more secure in terms of food security and feeding their populations than we are. You know, they still have very tight local communities, like the vast majority of their food production is on a very small, very local scale. And I think, yeah, as I'd say probably most people on this call know, in the West, we've developed these very elaborate, inappropriate growing and supplying food production and supply systems, which just are falling apart. And I thought it was quite interesting. I was chatting to a guy, I was at the Soil Association on Monday, and I was chatting to a guy there who works closely with very large scale growers, both organic and commercially sort of more, well, non-organic. And basically due to Brexit plus COVID, plus what's going on in Russia and the Ukraine, he's saying there's a lot of the large scale veg growers in the southeast of England are just deciding to take a year out this year because actually they're looking at their books and predicted costs of production this year, and it's really not worth it. So again, each time we have a crisis like this on a global scale, it sort of reminds you that the best thing we can do is support small scale local producers. And just briefly, at Kaitan, for people who don't know, we're growing for 130 households. I'm thinking that's, for me, actually, I need to be practical and actually find practical solutions. And what we're doing is growing for 130 local households. We're engaging 5 schools in the east of Swansea, teaching young people about the benefits of sustainable food production and eating it. We're providing training opportunities. We're building a community of growers really around the Swansea area and further afield. And we have lots of volunteers joining us every week. And I feel that's like building a really empowered food community around the work we do. And then running various training courses and talking on different webinars to kind of demonstrate the financial, social and environmental viability of the kind of system we're using. And it's really nice, actually. I guess I've seen, since coming back to Swansea, because I grew up here, in the last 8 years that I've been back and Kaitan sort of got up and running, we've seen like a massive influx of growers and new projects. And it's very early days, but I do feel like as much as there's a lot of struggles, there's more diversity and far more people on the ground doing things than there ever has been in the past in Swansea. So it's, you know, it is looking positive, but I do think we need to have a really practical push. I think it's all really good, like talking about all these different issues, but fundamentally, people like Trevor and Bettina, the council should be bending over backwards to say, come and do this, because actually we need people on the land producing food. That's like the be and end all of it, really. So everything else is kind of comes behind that, I think. You know, we need to support people to get on the land, produce food, and actually buy their produce. So yeah, I'm gonna hand over from there. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Tom, and thanks for being so emphatic there that the really key thing is to have growers on the land. So that's a really clear and important message. I'm going to take the opportunity to share another speaker's recorded presentation. Hannah Sabatia is the BAME Outreach Programme Developer at Swansea Council for Voluntary Services, SCVS, and that programme supports BAME communities in tackling the wide range of issues relating to access to healthcare and supporting improvements in how services can be effectively provided for Black and ethnic minority communities in Swansea.
When I talk about food, my mind goes far way back. I grew up in a farm where my dad grew everything that we ate. I remember one year in 1984, a couple of times I slept hungry. That was to do with climate and environment. Now I understand. For me, sustainability comes from having a smooth flow of food from the source to the consumer. Its distribution and how we manage it when we have it. This process is affected usually by many factors, which we all know. Lack of knowledge of what is nutritious or not does affect our choices at the consumer level. We end up spending our money in food that leave us with diet-related ill health. Lack of knowledge on how food is grown and how it come about creates this idea that machines make food. Thus, there is lack of appreciation in our minds. When I was in primary school, we had a project called Agriculture. Each student was given a small allotment to grow something as part of end-of-year exam. I was amazed at how some little effort produced such beautiful sight. But this helped me appreciate the hard work my mother was putting in bringing us up and bringing the kales and food on the plate on the table. I'm only showing how appreciation can be built in us, thus avoiding the waste that we see. We can't ignore that everybody is involved in this. Locally, we have food banks that receive any food that is overflowing on the food chain. I think this does help reduce food waste. I remember during lockdown, one woman I was supporting ended up homeless. I remember sending her to ask for help at the community fridge. For a whole year, she survived on what she collected there, plus many other food banks around Swansea. She had little cash. She managed all right. But the most sustainable thing for her would have had to perhaps allow her to work and fetch for herself. So we need to make some efforts to educate people about healthy eating, food and nutrition. I can say I just had a privilege to run an online course with a couple of women from diverse ethnic minority groups. These women amazed me by the level of their interest and the effort they made to finish the 6-week Level 1 Community Food and Nutrition course. Thank you, everyone.
So thank you to Hannah for that talk. Now, apologies to those of you who may have been lined up to speak. We really have run out of time to listen to speakers, but we want to allow as much time as possible to go into our breakout rooms, which is what's happening next. So certainly you will have opportunity to share in the breakout rooms. Now, these breakout groups are facilitated, and we have nominated facilitators and note takers who will take you through the process. The groups are about 7 or 8 people in each group, and I've shared a link in the chat to a shared document if you'd like to keep notes, but that's completely optional because there will be a note taker in your room. And a reminder really of the key question that we're going to be asking, which is, how do you picture a food system that works for people and nature in the city and county of Swansea? So I've put that question again in the chat. How do you picture a food system that works for people and nature in the city and county of Swansea? So your facilitators will try and guide the conversations, which will be informal and open conversations. So I hope you have the opportunity to share your views. We'll pick in each room, you'll pick some of the topics that we've covered this evening, some of those key issues to have a bit of discussion around. If your facilitator does this hand signal at you, it means please round up what you're saying. So don't take offence if your facilitator needs to keep people to time a little bit, so there's time to cover lots of topics. If you have a point to make or would like to speak, you can obviously use your hand signals on Zoom, but you can also simply raise your finger like I'm doing now. That means that you've got a point that you'd like to make. If somebody says something that you think is really brilliant and you just want to show you're emphatically enthusiastic about what they've said, you can do jazz hands, and that's a great way for somebody who's speaking to have that endorsement from those of you who are listening. And at certain points, your facilitator may wish to do something called a temperature check in your room, which will be saying, if you agree, put your hands up really high. If you disagree, put your hands down low. And if you're kind of in the middle somewhere, you can put your hands in the middle. So those are a few hand signals which you may or may not wish to use, but the jazz hands is a really nice, easy one just to show your support for people who are speaking. You've got about 45 minutes in these breakout rooms, and we'll try and allow that time, despite the fact that we're a little over time, because the most important thing is to make sure we hear from everybody. So in a moment, you will see that I'm opening up the breakout rooms and you'll click on the button to join your group. And I'm just checking that there wasn't anything else really important that I need to tell you before you go in. And you'll agree between you 1 or 2 key priorities to feed back into the group when you come back. Right, I think that's everybody back in the room, and I hope you were able to have nice conversations in your breakout groups. Huge thank you to our facilitators and note takers. We're all volunteers, of course, and we're all learning on the job about facilitating and note taking. So massive thanks. It can be a bit of a stressful job trying to manage these conversations and capture everything that everybody is saying. So big appreciation to our fantastic facilitators and note takers. I think it's my job now to ask each of the groups to report back your top points or priorities. So hopefully you have managed to agree on something that you'd like to share with the wider group. And in room 1, we had Jane Powell facilitating and Philippa taking notes. So would one of you like to report back? Philippa.
Yeah, so a big theme that came up for us was collaboration. So collaboration in all sorts of ways. So the networking we've been doing this evening, connecting up towns and projects, towns and regions projects, also connecting up visionary government strategy with grassroots things, so that it's got to be a two-way thing, that we need government strategy to support what's going on locally, but we need those ideas to come up from the grassroots. But really wanting to celebrate the collaboration that's happening and the collaboration that's developing and could happen. I think that's about it.
Super summary. Thank you, Philippa. And yeah, really great. I think tonight is the beginning of what we hope will be a new wave of collaboration across Swansea on food. So thank you for that. So in room 2, Laura was facilitating and Josh was the note taker. Who would like to report back from room 2? Josh.
Yeah, so our kind of key theme was education. A bit of affordability and accessibility is a problem, but yeah, key discussion around education about healthy food, that the kids are the future of food choices, and that they're the future of food systems that we create. And the average age of a farmer is 63 years old in Wales, and the farms just aren't getting passed on. And I just touched briefly, I know 3 farmers in the last 2 weeks that have died, which is thousands of acres that doesn't get passed on to kids, and the necessity for teaching that younger generation somehow, and getting into schools and getting into families and parents and educating them and being creative about how we do it. And so seeing projects like Catering and Trevor and Bettina and the smaller CSAs where more people can engage with it as opposed to kind of mass larger farms is crucial, because we need to educate people.
Thank you, Josh. Brilliant. Yes, education and engaging with younger people, really, really key. Thanks for reporting back. That sounds like a really useful discussion you guys have had. In room 3, we had Tennessee facilitating and Lynette taking notes. Who would like to report back?
Would you like me to, Tennessee?
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, please chime in and forgive us. We didn't have the time to take a vote, but I will try to wrap up some of the key points that the group shared. There was a good discussion about the good things that came out of COVID, and the community spirit and the resilience that was displayed, but you know, a bit of a loss of that, especially given the current circumstances with fuel prices and the war. More needs to be done in order to make sure that food is affordable and healthy, and that means in part support for smaller growers, access to land, a better planning system, and really helping to drive consumer behavior to maintain their support for organic growing. And then there was another really rich discussion about solidarity schemes and how in an entrepreneurial spirit, there have been private ways of supporting people with on lower incomes and food poverty in the absence of government support. But in Cameroon, we heard about this being done at a family level and with organic and really healthy food rather than what we see at food banks here. So there's are things that we can learn from abroad as well.
Thank you, Lynette. Great, great to hear that feedback. Room 4, we had Witch Hazel facilitating and Beth taking notes. Would you like to report back? What did you find as your top 1 or 2 priority points?
So we were at the same issue. We did run out of a bit of time. At the end, we emphasized local. So we were thinking about maybe the local community gardens. So emphasizing those, emphasizing the produce that comes from these community gardens and getting the community involved, and then using the food, making cakes with the fruit, making soups with the veg, and then selling this on. Equally in youth clubs, there were kids that were growing their own veg and then selling it on. This really educates people. Having a look at maybe combining all of the local growers to create almost like a very local supermarket, and also a very local wholesaler. So places like hospitals and schools, they are very quick to use Booker or any kind of large food supplier, where actually if there was a Swansea supplier that supplied everything from milk, eggs, bread, fresh food, fruit, they would likely use that. So they really wanted to emphasize that. And then also there was another point that was the food waste that started even before it got to our supermarkets. And I think people were calling for governmental change there for the strategies behind that food waste.
Brill, thank you, Beth. Lovely Thanks for reporting back. In room 5, Zoe was facilitating and Elizabeth was note-taking. Would you like to report your top priority point?
Yeah, we had some lovely discussions. So just flagging up, it was emphasis on education in schools as a way of engaging, getting the messages out to the wider community. Had a really good point about creating relationships and linkages between restaurants and growers, and the need for a directory of who is growing what, where, or producing what, where. Logistics around, you know, if supplies are coming from West Wales, you know, like use one vehicle instead of 5 to get into Swansea. And then there were calls for farms being a farm linked to every school, and lots more CSAs and small scale farms, mixed farms.
Great, thank you, Elizabeth. Thanks for that. In room 6, we had Vicky facilitating and Sean. I think you were note-taking in that room.
I was.
Would you like to report back, Sean?
Yeah, sure. We grouped ours under 2 sort of main themes, and the first big main theme was how to normalise eating, buying locally grown food and growing your own food, how to make it something that communities just see as the normal thing to do. And there were lots of discussions around different ways of doing that. And we had to look at ways of introducing people to locally grown food in the first place, ways to help them afford it, ways to introduce them to growing their own and encouraging them and helping them to grow their own. And it has to take into account a recognition that poverty itself is very stigmatizing, and that we can't make people who are poor feel that they don't belong to these groups that are growing their own food. We have to make it seem normal for them to do as well, and make it easy for them to do. So there's quite a lot under there around educating people and children in schools about the benefits of eating healthy food, the true cost of the food that they might think is actually more convenient and cheaper, but actually the true cost of that in terms of their health, etc., and its impact on the planet, of course. And children are a bit more environmentally savvy these days than we were when we were little. And taking projects into communities as well. So projects for taking locally grown food into communities to introduce people to it. And also projects for working in schools to encourage children to start growing their own food and taking grow your own food kits home so that their parents do it as part of their homework or something. Lots of discussion around those different ideas. And then we had a kind of, oh no, there were other ideas there as well, sort of the need for sort of community processing as well. So it's not just about growing, how to set up community projects that are actually there to process the food that's grown locally, so that the cost of the processing isn't outsourced. And local seed sharing systems can help as well, so you can make it exciting. Seed libraries and seed swap systems, and you can do things like get people to pledge to. The point was made that, you know, veg box schemes are fine, but even if you can afford it, it's a lot of vegetables if you don't actually know how to cook them, and you think you don't have time. So you can start by getting people to pledge to cook 1 meal a week for free, from fresh, just as they learn, and you can show them how to do that. And the second component was the regulatory systemic aspect of how to address the issue of access to land and the cost of land. So that was about bringing the main players into the conversation. Housing associations could be persuaded to have schemes themselves in their own houses and the land in their own schemes, a little bit like CSAs, but where their tenants have their hands held by people who know how to do it to start growing their own food, so that their ambition can grow bit by bit and they're supported within the place that they live to do that. And the planning system incorporating the community benefit component into its application systems, councils making land available and being persuaded to do that, and big businesses like Bellway, the big construction businesses. One of our members, Louise, said that Bellway is now creating communal spaces in all of its new housing schemes, or some of its new housing schemes.
In group 7, where Aaron was facilitating, Mary, would you like to report back a couple of your key points?
Yeah, we were having such an animated discussion. We realised we'd run out of time, but actually we did all agree that connectivity, it's quite easy to agree because it had been a theme really running through everything. Connectivity, beginning with that idea of connecting producer to customer, and from there then connecting alternative food networks, food hubs. Education's come up a lot, and that was built into it, so that you've got you connect events that are going on, and around these hubs and around these events, people come together and people get educated, and the network grows and people become more confident, share ideas. So.
Great, thank you for your summary there, Mary. That sounds like a rich discussion as well. Room 8, we had Phil facilitating, and who was taking notes in room 8?
It was Ailish who's had to leave us, I'm afraid, but so I'll quickly feedback some things. An awful lot of discussion kept coming back around to learning to cook, education, training. One thing, and a lot of others have already shared similar thoughts around that, but one thing that was raised was perhaps a lack in schools, a lack of opening up growing and farming as a career path, and there needs to maybe be more around that in schools. A big emphasis was around growing locally, as you might expect. We talked about CSAs and how might those be scaled up, either in size or in number of CSAs, and how those might link to other projects, including tackling food poverty, and some examples were shared. We talked about quite a number of different things, but in a nutshell, it was agreed that there are some huge challenges out there, to try and tackle, but also that little steps can make a difference. You have to start somewhere on each of those things.
Thank you, Phil. Brilliant. Room 9, we had Jennifer facilitating. You had 2 note takers, Evie and Kate. Who's going to report back from room 9?
I'm going to, because Evie's overall note taking. So our top points were improving the facilities for distribution of local produce, so central hubs, help with marketing on the kind of business side for local producers. We talked about the importance of improving local procurement in kind of big organisations, council, hospitals, schools, prisons, for local suppliers and also for the environment, and reducing dependence on food banks. And in our kind of dream big bit, we were talking about creating a 15-minute city where everything that you have is within a 15-minute bus or walk or cycle rides, everything you need. So that's better for everyone, isn't it? Planet and everything. Ooh. There we go.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kate. And then finally in room 10, Leonie was facilitating and Julia was note-taking. Would you like to report back?
Yes, we just concentrated on the issue 3, healthy food for all, and food, I suppose, particularly those in food poverty. And the 2 main issues were the importance of listening to as broad a range of people and as broad a range of people as possible, coming together to listen to each other, and never forgetting that you may have still missed out someone to listen to get as full an understanding as possible of the full range, the full experience of poverty, and the full experience of food. And the second thing that came through was the power of offering and having a new experience to change habits, create a sense of personal empowerment, potential to change. And that was talked about in relation to children actually going onto the land in school holidays to learn about food, or people trying a new vegetable to eat and discovering it's different from what they would eat in the supermarket, or cooking food in a different way, trying a slow cooker and seeing how that actually changes things at home, or makes cooking possible if you're in a B&B and don't have access to a kitchen. I hope that's captured everything.
Great, thank you, Julia. Thanks so much for that. Really rich discussions and great diversity of points, which goes to show the benefit of breaking up into smaller groups and different themes and ideas coming through. Obviously, some key themes and overlaps as well. So that has just been fantastic, and we certainly will collate all of the notes from all your breakout room discussions. So thank you very much for those. Right, can we try and have a word cloud? We're hoping to create a word cloud. So if you're able to open up the chat, we would like one word answer in the chat. What does sustainable food mean for you? So one word in the chat. What does sustainable food mean for you? And if we can have a Twitter, a chat storm of words, it will form a word cloud as we go forward. What does sustainable food mean for you? Your single words in the chat: happiness, healing, collaboration, local, solidarity, education. Great, yeah. Well-being, local, yes. Future. So you've probably picked up from all the discussion today that there's a steering group, an organising committee, those of us who are trying to make progress on Swansea advancing towards becoming a sustainable food place as part of the network. So perhaps some of you will want to be more involved as we go forward, and please do let us know in the chat how you would like to be involved going forward. And a quick shout out, because Jack is with us, and Jack, formerly of Farmco, and Farmco is still alive and kicking, but Jack has now been made local food coordinator with Swansea Council. So there we have somebody in that job who really understands the landscape around local food, local sourcing, regenerative agriculture, and he's left his email address in the chat there. But that's a strong partner in Swansea Council for us to work going forward. And I think now I need to hand over to Laura for some closing. Laura, can I hand over
thanks
to
so
you?
much. Thanks, Dawn. So as Dawn mentioned, all of the notes will now be collated, and they're going to be used to inform the overall vision of Swansea Food System strategy, and in particular the food charter and the 5-year community food strategy. So that's a really exciting thought. If you haven't had the chance to fill in the demographic questionnaire, if you could take a moment to do so, we'd be very grateful. And also please do let us know if you did want to join the Boyd Abatawi mailing list. So I just wanted to say a really big thank you to everybody for coming. A thank you to our facilitators and our note takers, my fellow convener and IT whiz Dawn, the fantastic steering group who have done so much behind the scenes, and in particular Elizabeth and Catherine, who they move mountains. They really do. They're absolutely incredible. So a really massive thank you to all of those people. And then finally, by way of closing, we're going to do this thing where we all say a word of gratitude, and then the meeting is going to just close. Okay, so we're all going to unmute ourselves and say a word of gratitude all at once. Okay, so let's give it a go, and then the meeting will just end. Okay, and that's what's supposed to happen. Okay, so 3, 2, 1.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well done, everyone.
Infinite gratitude.